Under the scorching Texas sun of August 1978, two men walked into the First Midland Savings Bank in Amarillo and changed the town's history forever. It was supposed to be an ordinary Thursday morning. Farmers cashed checks. A young teller rehearsed her first day behind the counter, and an old ceiling fan pushed the heavy smell of dust and ink through the air. At 9:47 a.m., the glass doors opened, and everything after that would remain sealed in police archives for nearly 2 decades. The robbers wore denim jackets, trucker caps, and cheap rubber masks from a gas station. They moved like men who'd done this before. Precise, fast, not a wasted gesture. The taller one, later known from grainy footage as Blue Cap, vaulted the counter, his shotgun leveled at the floor. The other, Driver, kept the lobby quiet with a single warning shot that shattered the clock above the manager's office. They left with $3 million in unmarked bills. Money that, as it turned out, didn't belong to the bank at all. It belonged to a man no one in Amarillo dared to name aloud, Rafael Cortez, the head of the Sinaloa Trade Corridor, who had been laundering his cash through small-town banks along the border. What Blue Cap and Driver didn't know that morning was that they hadn't just robbed a bank. They had robbed a cartel. The FBI arrived before noon. Sheriff Wade Laramie, a broad man with a face cut by years of dry wind, led the local response. They hit hard, clean, and disappeared, he said to the reporters that afternoon. There are no fingerprints, no getaway car found, and no suspects. The only clue, a torn piece of a road map smeared with motor oil, was found behind the bank, leading toward the desert highways west of town. For weeks, Amarillo buzzed with rumor. Some said it was an inside job. Others whispered that the robbers were ex-cops. But the truth sank deeper than anyone imagined. In a single morning, two ordinary men had lit a fuse that would burn for 15 years. Their names surfaced later: Thomas Tommy Rayburn and Jack Harlan. Both had served in Vietnam. Both came home broke, restless, angry at the world that forgot them. Tommy had been a mechanic in Odessa. Jack drove oil rigs through the Panhandle. They met in a bar off Route 287, a place where talk was cheap and dreams were smaller than the beer mugs. One big job, Jack had said, and we're gone. Mexico, new names, no past. Tommy hesitated, but Jack's plan sounded clean. No blood, no heroes, just get in, get out. What neither knew was that the cash flow through First Midland Savings had nothing to do with small-town deposits. It was part of a laundering route from El Paso to Houston, moving millions every month for Cortez's men. When that shipment vanished, so did the balance of power. Within days, 2 bodies were found in the desert, bank clerks who had handled the cash transfers. Their deaths weren't part of the robbery. They were messages. Locals stopped talking. The sheriff's office received anonymous calls, voices with Mexican accents, distorted by radio static, demanding the names of the robbers. But there were no names to give. Archive recording, September 2nd, 1978. 3 million untraceable notes, possibly cartel-linked. Interagency cooperation recommended. Suspects unknown. Motive uncertain. Tommy and Jack hid for 3 weeks in an abandoned farmhouse outside Lubbock. The radio played endless coverage of the Texas ghost robbery, but they stayed invisible. They split the cash, stuffed into army duffel bags, and planned to leave the country through Brownsville. But on the 4th week, Jack vanished. His car was found near a diner in San Angelo, doors open, engine running. No blood, no body, no signs of struggle. Tommy waited 2 more days, then fled alone. For 15 years, he lived like a shadow, changing names, moving towns, working odd jobs under the table. Every so often, he felt eyes on him in bus stations or bars. Once in 1985, a stranger slipped a folded note into his jacket pocket. Inside, a Polaroid of Jack, tied to a chair, bruised but alive. On the back, just 2 words: your turn. Cortez had not forgotten. His organization had suffered for the loss of that cash, $3 million then, closer to 12 in today's money, and his men combed Texas for whispers of the thieves. Police files show multiple unexplained disappearances linked to the case. Informants, truck drivers, a border patrol agent. But the case remained officially unsolved. In 1993, a new detective joined the Amarillo PD cold case unit. Eleanor Ellie Ward, 32, meticulous, stubborn, a student of old evidence. She found a Rayburn file on her first week. Dusted, half-burned photographs, coffee-stained reports, and that single torn map fragment. "It doesn't fit," she said to her partner, Sergeant Dan Keller, an old-timer from the original task force. If they went west, why was Jack's car south? Keller shrugged. "Because somebody wanted us to think they went west." Ellie started pulling old leads. One stood out. A service receipt from a truck stop in Sonora dated 3 days after the robbery, signed T. Ray. She tracked the handwriting through DMV forms and tax records until she found a Thomas Rayburn, deceased, 1987, listed under a different name. Car accident near Corpus Christi. But the autopsy photo showed a man at least 10 years older than Tommy's file. "So whose body was that?" she asked. Keller just looked away. Archive transcript. Police tape July 14th, 1993 Ward. "This body, it's staged. Dental doesn't match." Keller, "You're chasing ghosts, Ellie. Let it go." Ward, "The ghosts are the only ones telling the truth." The deeper she dug, the more resistance she met. Files went missing from storage. A federal agent visited her office, warning her to prioritize modern cases. Yet an anonymous envelope kept arriving at her home. Inside, photocopies of old bank ledgers and a new map marked with red ink circles across the desert routes. One note, handwritten in shaky block letters, read, "He's still alive. Look for the barn." In 1994, Ellie drove to the coordinates on that map, a desolate stretch near Vega, Texas. There, beneath the ruin of an old windmill, she found the remains of a makeshift shelter. In the dirt, half buried, was a rusted metal box. Inside, damp bills with 1970s serials, a broken wristwatch, and a Polaroid. 2 men at a bar, one of them unmistakably Tommy Rayburn, smiling with someone off camera. On the back, a date, May 1989. That discovery reopened the case. The FBI reclassified it as an interstate organized crime investigation. And for the first time in years, the name Rafael Cortez surfaced in official papers. But Cortez was already dead, shot in his villa near Culiacan in 1990. Whoever had been hunting Tommy was now without a master. Or maybe the hunter had become someone else entirely. Ellie traced Tommy's trail to a trailer park near El Paso, where residents recalled a quiet man calling himself Mr. Hayes, who fixed engines and kept to himself. He disappeared one winter, leaving behind a toolbox and a single newspaper clipping about the Amarillo robbery. What Ellie didn't expect came 2 months later. A plain envelope slid under her office door. No return address. Inside, an old cassette tape labeled 1979 Odessa. The audio was damaged, but fragments were audible. Tape excerpt, male voice number 1. "You said he'd never find us." Male voice number 2. "He won't." Not him, but someone will. That tape sent a chill through the department. Keller wanted to shelve it. No chain of custody, he argued. But Ellie heard something else, a faint hum like truck tires in the background. She sent it to a lab, and the sound was identified, a specific highway marker tone used by the Texas Department of Transportation on Route 385. That meant the recording was genuine, and the men on it had been alive months after the robbery. In December 1994, while reviewing financial archives, Ellie stumbled on one last document, a handwritten deposit slip dated August 1980, Midland Bank, amount $4,200, signed J. Harlan. A handwriting match confirmed it. Jack had survived. The slip was stamped with a branch code belonging to a town that officially didn't exist anymore, Burton Wells, a mining settlement abandoned after a chemical spill in 1979. Police maps had erased it, but Ellie found its location through an old postal route, just 20 miles from where the map fragment had first been found. That night, she drove out alone. Desert wind tore through the ruins. Her flashlight caught an old signpost, half buried, Burton Wells, EST 1914. And in the dirt near a collapsed barn door, something glimmered. She knelt. It was a keychain, rusted, but engraved with the letters JH. As she turned it over, her beam hit something else, a shallow mound of disturbed earth, recent, maybe days old. The sand was loose, freshly shoveled. Ellie froze, hand on her holster. Somewhere behind her, a coyote howled. She stepped closer, brushed away the sand, and saw the corner of a weathered envelope sealed in wax. She pulled it free, her pulse hammering. On the front, in faded ink, a single line, "To whoever finally looks." The sound of an approaching engine echoed across the desert. Headlights cut through the dust, sweeping toward her position. She folded the envelope into her jacket and killed the flashlight. The light stopped, idling. Then, slowly, the engine died. Silence. The night swallowed everything. And that was how the second part of the Amarillo ghost robbery began. If you want to know what she found inside that envelope, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The headlights hung there in the dark like two eyes that refused to blink. Ellie didn't move. The wind pressed the sand against her boots, hissing around the corners of the old barn. Whoever was out there knew where she was. She slipped the envelope deeper into her jacket and reached for her flashlight, careful not to make sound. The car door opened. A beam of light swept across the ruins, searching. "Detective Ward," a man's voice called. Calm, controlled. "You shouldn't be here." She recognized the accent, Midwestern, professional, someone who'd spent time in law enforcement. "Who are you?" she shouted back. The man stepped forward, gun holstered, badge glinting. "Special Agent Robert Laird, FBI. You're trespassing on federal evidence." Ellie hesitated. She had checked every database before coming. There was no Agent Laird assigned to the Amarillo office. He saw the suspicion in her stance. "You think I'm lying?" he said. "We've been tracking this case longer than you've been alive. Now hand over what you found." He took one step closer. That was when Ellie noticed his boots, dusty, not like someone who'd just arrived from a car, but like someone who'd been standing there, waiting. She lifted her hand slowly, then flicked on her flashlight, aimed it directly at his face. The badge was fake. The gun wasn't. A single gunshot cracked the silence, echoing across the plain. The flashlight fell, its beams spinning across the sand. When Ellie opened her eyes again, the man was gone. Her shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed past. The envelope was still in her jacket. She drove back to Amarillo before sunrise, heart pounding, headlights off for half the journey. At the station, she sealed the envelope in an evidence bag. "Chain of custody starts now," she said, and locked it in her drawer. Then she sat, bleeding, shaking, watching the sky lighten outside the window. When she finally opened the envelope 12 hours later, inside were two things: a short letter and a Polaroid photograph. The photo showed a man sitting in front of an old gas station, 1980s truck parked behind him. He was older but unmistakable, Jack Harlan. The letter was written in blue ink, shaky but legible. "To whoever looks. My name is Thomas Rayburn. I don't know how much time I have left. If you find this, don't believe the papers." Jack didn't vanish. He took the money. He took everything. They came for us. He made a deal with Cortez. He said it was the only way to live. I tried to run, but you can't outrun men who never stop watching. If someone ever finds this, tell my sister in Odessa I'm sorry. The letter was dated 1989, 6 years after the robbery. Ellie stared at the words, numb. If Tommy had written this, he had been alive much longer than the files said. And if Jack had made a deal with Cortez, that meant one of the robbers had crossed the line from thief to collaborator. The file wasn't about justice anymore. It was about survival. She sent the photo for analysis. Within a week, facial recognition confirmed it. The photo was taken in 1989 in Sierra Blanca, Texas, near the Mexican border. But when agents went to the site, the gas station was gone, burned to its foundations. Local sheriff's reports showed one name connected to the property lease, James Hall. A handwriting comparison confirmed it matched Jack Harlan. He'd been hiding in plain sight under a false identity, running a gas stop less than 50 miles from a border. And no one had noticed. Ellie wanted to go herself, but Keller warned her off. "This thing's older than both of us," he said. "Every time someone gets close, they disappear." She didn't care. "Then I guess I'll be next." She drove south 2 days later, alone again. Sierra Blanca was little more than a strip of highway and dust. The burned gas station sat like a skeleton against the sky. In the ashes of the office, she found a melted cash register, a broken mirror, and something lodged beneath the floor, an old tape recorder wrapped in plastic. The tape inside was labeled July 1990. When she played it back at the station, the sound was muffled but clear enough. Tape transcript. Male voice number 1. They think Cortez is dead. Male voice number 2. He's not. You just changed faces. Male voice number 1. You said I was safe. Male voice number 2. You are, Jack. As long as you keep paying. There was a pause, the crackle of a lighter. Then another voice entered. A third man, deep, accented. The money was never yours. Remember that. A thud, a curse, and then silence. The tape ended there. Forensic analysis dated the last few seconds to a night recording with background cicadas native to northern Mexico. It meant the meeting had taken place somewhere across the border. If Jack had been paying someone, that meant the stolen money, what was left of it, had become leverage in a game that never ended. Ellie took the findings to Keller. This isn't about the robbery anymore, she said. This is about who controlled the cleanup. Keller sighed. You think someone in law enforcement helped bury it? No, Ellie said. I think they were paid to. The investigation turned inward. She requested access to FBI communications from the late 70s. Most were classified, but one memo leaked through, a 1979 briefing from the DEA noting unauthorized cooperation with cartel intermediaries regarding missing assets for financial transfer. The memo was signed by a name Ellie had seen before, Special Agent Robert Laird, the same man who had pointed a gun at her in the desert. She tracked his record, officially retired in 1985, later working as a private consultant for border security. He had vanished in 1992, presumed dead in a car explosion near Laredo. No body was recovered. Ellie realized then that the man she met wasn't Robert Laird. It was someone using his name or someone who had become him. She reopened Tommy's death certificate and cross-referenced the fingerprints on the accident victim. They matched Robert Laird. It wasn't Tommy who died in that wreck. It was the agent. Someone had switched the bodies. Someone who wanted to vanish entirely. That someone could only have been Tommy himself. The next few weeks blurred into sleepless nights and whispered phone calls. Ellie received another envelope, this one postmarked from Juarez. Inside was a hotel receipt and a single phrase typed on a typewriter. If you want the truth, come alone. She went. The hotel was half empty, the neon sign flickering. Room 26 smelled of smoke and cheap cologne. She waited for hours. Then, around midnight, a man entered quietly, wearing a hat pulled low. He looked older, thinner, but when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of all those missing years. You found the letter, he said. Ellie froze. Tommy Rayburn? He nodded. I shouldn't be here, but I can't keep running. He sat, hands trembling. Jack and I, we thought we were robbing a bank. We didn't know whose money it was. When we found out, it was too late. Cortez offered protection, but only for one of us. Jack took it. I didn't. I ran. Ellie recorded every word. Why come forward now? Tommy looked out the window. Because the man who calls himself Laird isn't working for any government. He's cleaning the books. And when he's done, no one will remember any of this. Before she could ask more, a gunshot shattered the window. Tommy fell sideways, blood blooming across his shirt. Ellie ducked, drawing her weapon, but the shooter was gone before she reached the door. When she turned back, Tommy was still alive, barely. Locker, 317, he whispered. Bus station, Midland. Then he was gone. Ellie drove straight there at dawn. Locker 317 was old, rusted, unclaimed for years. Inside, she found a small metal box containing photographs, receipts, and a single roll of undeveloped film. When processed, the images showed men in suits, Cortez, Jack, and two uniformed officers, standing beside a stack of crates marked FMSB 1978. The same initials as First Midland Savings Bank. One of the officers in the photo was Keller. She confronted him that evening. He didn't deny it. We were told it was recovery, he said quietly. They said the money had to go back where it came from. I didn't know what they meant until it was done. You worked for them? She asked. I worked for survival, he said. You don't understand what it was like. They owned everyone. Who's they? Keller looked at her, eyes wet. Not the cartel. The Bureau. They were laundering the cartel's cash long before the robbery. Cortez was just the face. He handed her a folder. Inside were internal memos, names, dates, and proof that millions had been cycled through cooperative financial channels in exchange for information on rival traffickers. Jack didn't steal their money, Keller said. He exposed them. That's why they wanted him dead. Ellie felt the world tilt. The Amarillo ghost robbery hadn't been a heist gone wrong. It had been the unmasking of a system designed to keep both criminals and agents rich. Tommy and Jack were never the villains. They were collateral. Days later, Ellie tried to go public. But the night before the press briefing, her apartment was broken into. Files gone. The film negatives destroyed. The only thing untouched was the envelope with Tommy's letter. She was reassigned a week later to another department for her safety. Officially, the case remained unsolved. Unofficially, people started asking questions. A retired journalist from Dallas contacted her, saying he had found a second copy of the 1990 tape. He sent her a digital file. This time, the ending was longer. After the last thud, Jack's voice came back, weak but audible. If anyone hears this, I'm sorry for what I did. The money's gone. I burned it. It wasn't worth the blood. Ellie listened to that line over and over. Burned it. $3 million turned to ash. She went back to the burned gas station in Sierra Blanca and dug beneath the floorboards. What she found wasn't money, but charred metal fragments, hundreds of them, blackened and fused together. Bill's cereals were still faintly visible under the soot. He had told the truth. Jack had destroyed the money. The myth that had haunted Texas for decades ended there, in a pile of ashes no one ever cared to find. But one mystery remained. Who had killed Tommy? There was no trace of the shooter, no vehicle, no witnesses. Then, months later, a report surfaced from Ciudad Juarez. A man matching Laird's description found dead in a warehouse fire. No identification, but the fingerprints matched the ones Ellie had lifted from the fake badge in 1994. Whoever he was, his pursuit ended there. Ellie submitted her final report in 1996. The file concluded. Case closed, primary suspects deceased, funds unrecovered, probable corruption at multiple jurisdictional levels. Further investigation not advised. But privately, she kept one copy of everything. Every photo, every note, every recording. And every year on August 17th, the anniversary of the robbery, she drove back to Amarillo and stood across from the rebuilt First Midland Bank, now a family restaurant. She would sit in her car and look through the windshield, as if expecting two men in denim to walk out again, laughing, unaware of the storm behind them. In one of her last recorded interviews before retirement, she said softly, "They weren't heroes, but they weren't devils either. They were just two men who made one terrible decision. The system made sure they never got to make another." In 2003, an anonymous donation of exactly $3 million was wired to a veterans rehabilitation fund in Texas. The sender's name was listed as JH. The account was closed 2 days later. The origin could never be traced. Whether it was guilt, redemption, or the echo of a ghost, no one ever knew. Today, the story of the Amarillo ghost robbery lives in documentaries, podcasts, and half-forgotten police reports. But somewhere in a dusty archive box labeled Case 78 to 1432, there's still a burned envelope, a photograph of two young men, and a sentence written in fading ink to whoever finally looks. And every time someone opens that file, the same questions return. Who was really in control? How many lies did it take to keep the truth buried? And what is $3 million by when your soul is already sold? What do you think? Was justice ever truly served? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Disclaimer: all characters, names, and locations in this story are fictionalized or altered. We're inspired by real historical events. Sources were verified for accuracy and ethical representation.